On Christmas Eve, my brother's daughter tore open my gift and sneered. Dad says, "You only buy trash." His wife held with laughter. I stayed silent. That night, I froze their credit cards. At 7:22 a.m., they were denied at the store checkout. And then I knew it would be awkward the second I parked in front of my parents' house and saw my brother's brand new SUV in the driveway. The same brother whose rent I quietly covered last month and his gas bill. But God forbid he downgrade his vehicle, or heaven forbid, thank me. Christmas Eve was always a weird dance for me. Smile, nod, act like I didn't know they talked behind my back. They being my brother Jake, his wife Amanda, and their delightful 10-year-old demon spawn Ellie. My daughter Ava clung to my hand while we walked up to the door. She was 7 and still had that sweet innocence that made me want to protect her from everything, including my own family. She was clutching a tiny bag she decorated herself. Inside was a clay snowman she made for Grandma. It looked like it had melted in a microwave, but it was cute because she made it. My parents answered the door like they always did. Too cheerful. My mom's eyes scanned the gifts in my hands, and she made her usual little hum. No hello, just that disappointed hum like she was expecting more. Inside, Jake was already parked on the couch, beer in hand like he lived there. Amanda sat beside him, scrolling through her phone, occasionally throwing glances toward me like I smelled bad. Ellie sat in the middle of the living room, surrounded by a mountain of gifts, none of which she waited to open. I placed my modestly wrapped boxes under the tree. My gifts weren't flashy, but I took time to pick them out. Thoughtful stuff I could afford. After helping keep Jake's lights on, I gave Ellie her gift, a coloring set with watercolor pencils, sketchbooks, and a DIY jewelry kit. She ripped it open and immediately turned up her nose. Dad says, "You only buy trash." Silence except for Amanda's laughter. He actually laughed loud, echoing like her daughter just told the joke of the year. Jake didn't say a word, just grinned at me like we were back in high school and he'd shoved my face in the snow. My parents, nothing, not a word. My mom blinked like she was unsure whether to scold Ellie or agree with her. My dad looked at the ceiling. I didn't say anything, just stood there. Ava squeezed my hand and looked up at me, confused. That night I waited until I was back in my room at their house. Yes, their house, because they insisted we all stay over. I opened my laptop and logged into the joint account I used to manage Jake's bills. Frozen every card, turned off autopay, changed passwords, closed the emergency line of credit they used just in case. At exactly 7:22 a.m. The next morning, while I sipped my coffee and watched Ava quietly play with her dolls, Jake and Amanda were being humiliated at the checkout counter of whatever overpriced toy store they ran to last minute. My mom barged into the living room with her phone in hand, face red, asking if I'd messed with Jake's accounts. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned to Ava and asked if she wanted to go for a walk before breakfast. She nodded. I left the room without another word. We didn't walk far, just around the block. It was quiet except for the snow under our boots. Ava held my hand without saying much, but I could tell she was thinking about what Ellie said. She eventually looked up at me and asked softly, "Why did she say your gift was trash?" I didn't know how to explain cruelty that gets passed down like heirlooms, how it starts with parents making excuses and ends with kids thinking it's okay to humiliate others. So I just said she was wrong. When we got back to the house, the tension hit us like heat from an oven. Amanda was pacing in the hallway with her phone on speaker, berating some poor customer service rep at her bank. Jake was sitting at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. My dad stayed parked in his usual spot, flipping through the paper like nothing unusual was happening. And my mom, she had the nerve to greet me like I'd just burned down the tree. "Tommy, did you do something to their cards?" I didn't even pretend to play dumb. I just said yes and walked past her. Ava went to the basement to play with her dolls, and I sat on the edge of the guest bed, feeling my heartbeat settle. A few minutes later, Jake came in. No yelling, no drama, just this smug little half smile like he was daring me to back down. "You froze the accounts." "Yeah." And the line of credit gone. He didn't say another word, just left the room. I heard Amanda's voice rise from downstairs. Something about fraud, legal action, how this was financial abuse. I smiled for the first time that day. At breakfast, my mom acted like nothing happened. She served pancakes and asked if I still planned on going to the candlelight service. I ignored her. My dad made a point of saying nothing at all. Ava barely touched her food. She kept her eyes down the whole time, quiet and careful. I hated that. Later, I went to the kitchen to get Ava a snack, and I overheard them. My parents whispering like they were teenagers talking trash in a locker room. She didn't have to make a scene. My mom said, "She always turns everything into some drama." My dad replied, "That was the moment I stopped tiptoeing." I walked right in and asked if they thought Ellie came up with that insult by herself. They didn't answer. I asked if it ever occurred to them that maybe Jake had been feeding her that garbage and they just let it slide because they always let it slide. Still nothing. Then I told them the part they never wanted to know. I've been paying their mortgage. The look on their faces would have been funny if it didn't feel so pathetic. My mom blinked. My dad went pale. "Every month," I added. "While you sat here bragging about how Jake's getting back on his feet, I've been keeping his lights on, buying Ellie's school supplies, and covering the groceries Amanda posts about like she paid for them." My mom tried to say something about me being harsh. I stopped her. "You want to talk about harsh? Ellie humiliated me in front of everyone, and you laughed. They didn't deny it." That night, I kept to myself. Ava and I stayed in the room and watched an old movie on my laptop while the rest of them stomped around like they were the victims. Ava leaned against me and whispered, "I'm glad it's just us." I almost cried because for the first time I understood it fully. Family isn't who shares your name. It's who shares your silence, your small moments, your trust. And for me, that was Ava. The rest, they were just noise I'd been carrying for too long. They were gone when I woke up. Not a word to anyone. No goodbye, no awkward apology, not even a passive-aggressive comment. Just gone. Jake and Amanda had packed their bags sometime before sunrise and left Ellie behind with my parents. Apparently, their real family emergency was figuring out how to survive without my money. I found Ellie in the living room, sitting too close to the TV with a bowl of dry cereal. No one had even bothered to help her with breakfast. My mom was in the kitchen pretending everything was normal, humming like she was starring in some Hallmark movie. My dad was on the back porch smoking a cigar he always claimed he gave up. No one mentioned what happened the day before. I started packing quietly, just Ava's clothes and the few things we brought. My mom noticed and asked if we were leaving early. I didn't explain. I just said yes. She followed me out to the driveway holding a cup of coffee like we were having a casual chat. "You know," she said, "your brother's going through a hard time. Maybe you could have handled things differently." "Maybe," I said, "but I didn't." She frowned, like I just disappointed her for the 100th time, and turned around without another word. No hug for Ava, no goodbye, just walked back inside like she had laundry to do. Ava and I drove home in silence for a while. She looked out the window and asked if we could put up our own decorations, even though Christmas was almost over. I told her we could leave them up all year if she wanted. She smiled and said, "Just us next time." Okay. That's when I decided, no more invitations, no more splitting holidays, showing up with carefully picked gifts only to get sneered at or ignored. I wasn't doing it anymore. I wasn't going to raise Ava in that kind of environment where the loudest, rudest people always got excused, and the quiet ones were expected to carry the weight. We stopped at a little shop on the way back and bought string lights and a few purple ornaments. Ava picked out a tiny plush reindeer and named it Pancake for no reason. We laughed the whole ride home. That night, after she went to bed, I checked my phone. Dozens of missed texts and calls. "Jake, we get it." "Okay. Can you unfreeze the accounts now? We've got bills." "Amanda, you're punishing us for something a child said. You need help." "Mom, I know this has been hard for you, but don't throw away your family over pride." "Jake needs you. Ellie needs stability right now." Stability. They used that word like I hadn't been the only reason they had it in the first place. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the banking app and began shutting everything down for good. Closed the joint savings, canceled the automatic transfers, removed myself from every connection I had to their mess. Then I went a step further. I contacted the landlord of Jake's rental. Turns out I was still listed as a co-signer on the lease, something I forgot I even agreed to years ago. I sent the paperwork to remove myself. The next day, Jake called. I let it ring. He left a voicemail. "This isn't funny anymore. They're saying we could be evicted." You want Ellie to be homeless? Is that what you want? I played it twice, not because I felt guilty. I wanted to remember the tone in his voice when it hit him. The free ride was over. Ava and I spent the day putting up the lights around the apartment. She insisted they go around the windows, and when we were done, she turned off all the lamps just to watch them glow. We sat on the floor eating microwave popcorn and watching an old cartoon, and she leaned against me and said, "This is the best Christmas." And somehow it was. No fake smiles, no insults hidden behind laughter, no pretending, just the two of us finally in peace. I hadn't heard from Jake or Amanda in 5 days, the longest silence from them in years. No texts, no voicemails, no guilt trips, just blissful quiet. Ava and I had fallen into a rhythm. Morning cartoons, afternoon crafts, dinners, just the two of us. For once, our lives felt like they actually belonged to us. Then, on a rainy Thursday morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Tommy Turner?" "Yes, speaking. This is Donna with the district's billing office. We're calling to follow up about the outstanding tuition balance for Ellie Morris." I froze. She continued like this was a routine call, like she hadn't just sucker punched me. "You're still listed as the responsible party. We've sent 2 notices but haven't received a payment." I said, "I didn't sign up for anything for Ellie." "Well," she said, clearly trying to stay polite, "you're listed on the application. There's a signature." The call ended with her promising to email me the scanned enrollment form. 10 minutes later, it hit my inbox. There was my name, my full name, but the signature wasn't mine. The handwriting was Amanda's. She had signed me up to be financially responsible for Ellie's private after-school program, something they hadn't even mentioned during Christmas. It was nearly $3,000 in back tuition. I sat there in disbelief, and the part that hit me hardest, I hadn't even blinked when I first heard the amount. That's how used to being exploited I had become. I drove straight to the school district office and demanded to see someone in person. A woman behind the counter looked me dead in the eye and said, "If it's fraud, you'll need to file a police report and submit a notarized affidavit. Otherwise, you're liable. No emotion, no sympathy, just policy. Fine." I left, drove straight to the police department, and filed the report. The officer looked over the documents and asked if I was willing to press charges. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "They did this on purpose." That night, I got the first angry message. "Amanda, are you actually serious with this school thing? You could have just told us." Then another. "Amanda, it was a mistake. Tommy, why are you being vindictive? Ellie loves that program. Then Jake, you're blowing this way out of proportion. Stop making drama where there isn't any." But they knew what they did. This wasn't a mix-up. They were just used to me cleaning it up quietly. I didn't reply. The next day, it got worse. I received an alert from my tax software. My 2024 tax return had been flagged because Ava had already been claimed as a dependent by someone else. My stomach turned. I logged in and pulled the fraud notification. The system showed Jake's name. He had filed early, probably desperate for a quick refund, and he'd claimed Ava as his daughter. He stole her identity to steal from me. I sat there shaking, not crying, just completely still. It was one thing to use my money to lie, to talk behind my back, but to take Ava's name, her information to benefit himself, that crossed a line I didn't even know existed. I called my accountant and explained everything. She went silent for a moment, then said, "Tommy, we need to fix this now, and you need to report him." "I already filed a report yesterday," I said. "This just adds to it." I spent the next 3 hours pulling documents, birth certificate copies, school records, everything that proved Ava was mine. My accountant sent a legal declaration to the IRS that same day. That night, I received a final voicemail from Jake. It was 1 minute and 22 seconds of pure bile. "You're ruining everything. You don't understand how hard things are for us. We were counting on that refund. Ellie needs school. Amanda needs medication. You're heartless. You're sick. You're trying to destroy our lives over a couple of signatures. You want to play this game? Fine, but don't come crawling back when you realize you're all alone." I saved the voicemail. Then I called my lawyer. I had been helping Jake with his taxes, bills, mortgage, and rent for 4 years. I had records, screenshots, bank statements, contracts. I wasn't just cutting them off anymore. I was documenting everything. I told my lawyer I wanted to file a formal cease and desist. I wanted to remove myself from every legal, financial, and housing document tied to them permanently. And just when I thought the week couldn't get worse, a letter arrived in the mail. A notice from a collections agency, a credit card opened in my name 5 years ago. One I hadn't used and completely forgot existed. The balance maxed out. Jake's name was listed on the authorized user account. They had been using my credit silently in the background for years. It was all unraveling, and it was about time. The worst part of betrayal is realizing how long it was happening while you weren't paying attention. I thought I was being generous, supportive, but now I saw it clearly. They had been playing me from every angle, stealing, forging, lying, and I had been too exhausted to notice. The next morning, I sat down at my kitchen table with a legal pad and started writing out everything I could remember. Every account I opened for Jake, every emergency Amanda had. Every time my parents told me to just be the bigger person, the list was long. By noon, I had 4 years of quiet exploitation documented with receipts, screenshots, and digital backups. I sent it all to my lawyer and told her I was ready to move forward with everything. The police reports, the IRS fraud case, the collections agency dispute, and the financial disentanglement. She asked me if I wanted to pursue civil damages. I hadn't even thought about it. Can I asked. You can, she said, and you'd win. Something in me snapped into focus. Yes, I would. Not because I wanted revenge. Not even for the money, but because I was done being afraid of their anger, their guilt trips, their chaos. If they wanted to burn bridges, I'd hand them the matches and watch. Later that night, Ava was coloring on the floor when I got a message from my mom. Your brother told me, you're suing him. This is family, Tommy. Why are you trying to destroy it? I stared at the message for a long time. Then another one came in. We raised you better than this. No, they didn't. They raised me to believe that love meant tolerating abuse, that silence was strength, that survival meant carrying everyone else's burdens no matter how heavy they got. I unlearned all of that myself. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Ava over, scooped her into my lap, and asked if she wanted to go on a little trip. Like a vacation, she asked, eyes wide. Just a weekend, you and me. She nodded so fast it made me laugh. The next day, I booked a cabin 2 hours away, somewhere quiet, surrounded by trees where I could breathe. I turned off my phone and packed our things. No texts, no calls, no drama, just us. The cabin was small but warm, with a wood stove and a giant window overlooking the forest. Ava spent most of the weekend collecting rocks and pretending they were treasures. We cooked pasta on a tiny stove and read books by flashlight when the power flickered from the storm outside. It was the most peaceful 48 hours I'd had in years. When we got home, I turned my phone back on. 37 missed calls, dozens of texts, a voicemail from Amanda that started with, "You think you've won?" and ended in something close to begging, then one final message from Jake. I lost my job. Amanda's parents won't help. We're going to lose the house. Are you really going to let that happen to your own family? Yes, I was, because I had my own little family now, just me and Ava. And the more they sank, the lighter I felt. My lawyer called that night and said Jake had finally responded to the cease and desist. Not with a lawyer, not with an apology, with a handwritten letter. She read it to me over the phone. It was pathetic. He blamed Amanda, blamed stress, blamed me, said he didn't know how bad things had gotten, claimed he didn't mean to hurt anyone, said Ellie was suffering, but never, not once, did he take responsibility. I told her to move forward with everything, freeze what could be frozen, file what could be filed, wipe them from every document, every account, every obligation, burn it to the ground. That night, Ava fell asleep with her hand in mine, and for the first time, I felt something I hadn't in years. Free. The legal paperwork was finalized by the end of January. Every account Jake had touched in my name closed. Every fraudulent charge disputed. The tax fraud claim was now under official review with the IRS, and I was cleared as Ava's sole legal guardian on file. The collection agency was notified of the identity theft, and I had a police report to back it all up. I was no longer attached to them in any way, and it felt unreal. For weeks, I kept waiting for something to pull me back. A call from my mom, a message from Amanda, pretending nothing happened. Maybe even some fake apology, dramatic and hollow, begging for another chance. But there was nothing. Then, on a random Tuesday morning, I received an envelope, handwritten, no return address. I opened it expecting another guilt trip from Jake. It wasn't. It was from Ellie. In shaky, childish writing, she said she missed Ava, that she didn't understand why I was mad at her parents, that her dad said I was being mean, but she remembered I used to make the best grilled cheese. She asked if Ava could come over for a sleepover soon. I read it twice, and then I cried, because beneath all the anger and wreckage, there was still a kid caught in the middle, still learning who to be loyal to. And I knew she was just repeating what she heard at home. But it still hurt because she was just a kid I used to buy art supplies for, a kid I used to help with her homework when Jake and Amanda were too busy arguing in the other room. I didn't respond. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer, not because I was holding on to hope, but because I needed the reminder that forgiveness and access are two different things. You can forgive someone quietly from a distance. You don't owe them your peace. You don't owe them your presence. The next week, Ava's school had a family day. Arts and crafts, face painting, those little cups of lemonade that cost too much. I watched her paint a crooked heart and write Mom in the center in purple glitter. She looked up at me with that toothy grin and said, "It's you and me forever, right?" Right. After everything I lost this year, I gained one thing I didn't even know I was missing: clarity. I had spent so many years keeping that family together, holding my breath during holidays, swallowing insults, pretending love was louder than disrespect. But I finally realized something no one had ever said out loud. You're allowed to walk away from people who don't love you the way you need to be loved, even if they're your blood, especially if they're your blood. I didn't return the letter. I didn't answer the last voicemail Jake left me 2 weeks later, the one where he finally admitted he might have gone too far. I didn't send Christmas cards or check in on my parents or call anyone when Amanda's birthday came and went. I cut the cord and I never looked back. Ava and I started new traditions. We hung lights in April, ate pancakes for dinner every Friday, built blanket forts, said I love you every day. Even if we were just going to the grocery store, we didn't need big speeches. We just needed each other because at the end of the day, she was the only one who saw me, and I was finally learning to see myself.